What is going on, all you wonderful A-plussers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Superman and Lois review. This time I'm going to be talking about episode number 13, Failsafe. Another really good episode, although a very laid-back episode, very much more focused on the Clark Kent side of things than the Superman side of things, which, of course, when you have writers as good as the writers that we have working on Superman and Lois, is not a bad thing, because, I think one thing that's so fascinating about the show is how, it doesn't need to have Superman action in it every episode for it to be entertaining. The family drama that goes into this is honestly just as entertaining as the Superman side of things a lot of the times, sometimes even more, but we'll get to that as we talk about the episode. But before I really begin this review, a couple things I want to bring up is, yes, I have finally moved into my new apartment. This is going to be my new setup for a little while, so I'm really excited about that. The other thing is that I apologize if I'm a little bit low energy today. I had a lot more moving I had to finish up yesterday, and I also woke up with an extremely sore throat, and I'm not sure if it was from last night from just, trying to instruct people on, basically while moving things, you kind of have to raise your voice because you're carrying heavy objects, but you're also trying to direct the other person to go like one specific way. So because of that, it might have caused a little bit of a strain on my voice. So I do apologize if my voice is a bit scratchy during this review and if I'm a bit low energy. But that all said, I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this episode, and it was, again, another really fantastic episode. So let's definitely start with the beginning part, because we see that Morgan Edge is, while he's definitely a villain without any justification behind him, he's also just as much a victim, because we see that he's definitely a victim of child abuse from his father, and the fact that his dad, both physically and mentally is just abusing him, telling him, that he's nothing without him, and that his only purpose in life is to fulfill his father's mission. And all this while, he's hitting Morgan Edge with a wave of just energy that does nothing but cause him absolute pain in order to get him used to the idea of pain, so that hopefully in battle he will be able to go without actually having to feel it or have to actually suffer through it. So definitely some really dark stuff going on with Morgan Edge, and it does kind of bring in the idea that it is possible that Morgan Edge could be redeemed sometime down the line within the next few seasons. Personally, I don't see it happening this season, and I really hope it doesn't, because just with everything that he's caused this last season, I feel like if they try to redeem him this early, it just wouldn't work. So I really hope this is, if they do decide to redeem Morgan Edge, that they take their time with it, and that happens very slowly over time. But that said, speaking of Morgan Edge, he is currently, of course, in military custody, and Superman is trying to get answers from him about where the Eradicator went, but Morgan Edge is trying to assure Superman that the Eradicator is absolutely useless to him, and that he has no reason to go looking for it. This could mean one of two things. One, when Morgan Edge absorbed the power from the Eradicator, it's possible that the Eradicator was completely destroyed, or even if it's not destroyed, even if Superman were to find it, it's very possible that the Eradicator is just a piece of junk now, and that there's literally no use for it anymore. That said, it is also very possible that Morgan Edge is just straight up lying, because the Eradicator could also possibly be used to get rid of Morgan Edge's new power update that he kind of gets, that we got a hint of in the previous episode. But we'll get a little more into as we get towards the end of this episode's review. Meanwhile, at school, we see that, school is not going well for anyone after everything that's going on, especially for the two Kents, because with their grandfather being the one in charge of the DOD, everyone is trying to get answers as to what's happening to Smallville, and so they're constantly pestering the two of them for information. While that's going on, you got Sarah Lang, who is basically really sick of having her friends constantly basically blaming her parents for everything that's going on, and a lot of her friends that we see are kind of giving her the dirty look and basically, kind of blaming her almost just as much as her parents, despite her literally having absolutely nothing to do with Morgan Edge. We do find out why this is later on in the episode, and it is pretty messed up, and I'll definitely bring it up when we get to it, but because of this, pretty much everyone wants to skip school, including Sarah. So she and Jordan kind of go their own way during the episode. But while that happens, Jonathan gets asked out, basically, or maybe not out like on a date, but basically gets asked if he wants to ditch class with this girl that he's kind of been crushing on the last couple of episodes. I don't remember if I've ever brought her up because she hasn't really been important to the show. So I feel like I've never really brought her up as a character, but she's now asking Jonathan if he wants to hang with her, and of course he totally agrees. Meanwhile, we cut back to the Gazette at Smallville, and the head of the newspaper isn't really happy because she can tell that Lois Lane is clearly hiding something from her about the DoD and their true purpose of being there. And unfortunately, Lois Lane isn't really able to release all the information. At least she can't get her dad's approval to do so. I'll get a little bit more into this at the very end of the episode because, of course, it does, like a lot of things, kind of come full circle towards the end. But let's just say the situation, or the solution to the situation, isn't the most ethical, and I'll give my reasons on why I think that is later on. We then cut to some Clark Kent and John Henry Iron moments, and I really like that now we got the two of them working together, and that we even have John Henry Irons just straight up living in their barn currently. Superman is asking John if he, like, once they finish capturing Leslie Lar, if he's interested in a position at the DoD, but John Henry Irons just kind of tells him he wants to try to move on with his life immediately afterwards, try to make a life for himself on this new Earth, and see, you know, what kind of new connections he can make with other people. One of those, of course, being his sister, who gets mentioned by the AI, that you know she still exists on this Earth, and maybe, you know, having another version of her brother might be helpful, or maybe it would make things worse. It's definitely hard to say for sure. Meanwhile, I do apologize I couldn't get a better photo, just because it was a brief fight scene, so all I have is this like kind of shot which looks a little overly sexual, but it's definitely not meant to be. But essentially, Leslie Lar is seemingly trying to break Morgan Edge out of DoD custody, and Superman arrives just in time to stop her, but as she's about to kind of overpower him for a brief moment, John Henry Irons stops her, and we get this cool fist bump moment between the two of them. And again, I do like it. They're not like necessarily best friends or anything like that, but I do like how they both clearly have respect for each other, and that they're both willing to work together to get done what needs to be done. Also, I still think the Steel costume, even if it does look a little bit too much like Master Chief, I still think the costume looks absolutely fantastic in the show. Meanwhile, back at the DoD, Sam basically tells Superman and Steel that he's done harnessing kryptonite, basically. So he's going to put an end to 7734, and basically wants to try to assure Superman that he will never try to turn on him again, or he'll never, not that he was ever turning on him, sorry, that was probably the wrong terminology to use, but more of that he won't ever doubt that Superman, like Superman's loyalty to everyone. But Superman isn't quite sure about this decision overall, and this is what I found really interesting, because it kind of brings up a few points that I brought up with previous episodes, and I'll talk more about that later on in the episode when we get to that point. But we also have like a moment with Kyle Cushing and him seeing a couple of his friends from the fire station, and we see that none of them are really happy to see him, and they all clearly do blame Kyle for everything that's going on. So even at work, none of his friends really have his back anymore. It's definitely a really sad scene to watch. And then we cut back to John Kent, basically kind of on a date with the girl that he's had a crush on, but he does find out that really she was never actually interested in hanging out with him, but all she really wanted was to kind of get information about what's going on. Part of it because, like, it's clear that she's kind of trying to build up her stats as, like, the popular girl at school, and what would make you more popular than, you know, having the information as to what's actually going on when no one else has the answers. I do like that Jonathan Kent just immediately just decides to leave right then and there. Doesn't really fall for any of her tricks. Just kind of says, "Yeah, I'm just gonna walk home then," and then just kind of proceeds to walk away afterwards. We then have some more scenes with Jordan Kent and Sarah Cushing, and I absolutely love the cinematography here. First of all, wherever it is that they're filming at is an absolutely beautiful hiking spot. and I absolutely love just the way that it's filmed, especially with like kind of the reflection that we see here in this shot of the lake and the two of them. I think it's like absolutely so beautifully shot. But unfortunately their time together, while, you know, you have the two of them kind of talking about how, you know, their different struggles and everything, and how the two of them are helping each other, you know, throughout their struggles. They unfortunately get arrested right then and there for trespassing. And this I find absolutely ridiculous. The only crime here is the fact that a place like that would be considered off limits. Like, whoever bought up that property just to shut it down and not let anyone like go there, you're a terrible person, let me just say. And I know this isn't like a real person in real life owns this land, but man, you know, if you own land like this that you don't use and you just shut it down for, you know, other people so they can't go hiking there, you're a terrible person, just letting you know. I say that because I'm very, like, I'm not necessarily passionate about hiking, but I definitely do love hiking every now and then. And every time I find a spot like this and I see that it's shut down, that kind of thing does definitely irritate me for sure. That all said, we cut back to Superman, who's back at the DOD talking with Sam Lane, and he tells Sam Lane that he doesn't want him to shut down 7734 because Superman is worried that, you know, what if this isn't the only time I could possibly turn? What if something else were to come up and that could possibly, you know, turn me against humanity? He thinks that humanity has a right to have a backup plan in case of the worst case scenario. One thing that doesn't come up in this episode, and I've kind of brought this up a few times, is it really feels like this show is pretending that Supergirl doesn't exist. And I say this because a moment like this, where Superman's making a big decision in order to have a contingency plan for himself, he wouldn't be the only one that should be consulting Sam Lane about this. Or he shouldn't just be consulting Sam Lane. He should also be consulting his cousin about this. And yes, I'm fully aware that the show really, like, the writers of the show are kind of assuming that most people that are watching this are probably not familiar with other shows in the Arrowverse, and I totally get that. And I also totally get the idea that, it's COVID, so trying to get people to make guest appearances here and there would be almost impossible. That said, I feel like it would have been really easy to write around that, offhandedly mentioning the fact that Superman has a cousin who also has powers. I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to do, but also be able to not isolate anyone who doesn't watch any of their Arrowverse shows. And at the same time, I don't think you would need Melissa Benoist to make like an appearance or anything like that. I think you could just have a one-off line of maybe Sam Lane saying, "Hey, have you consulted your cousin about this?" Something like that. It is very strange how, we're 13 episodes in and Supergirl hasn't even been like referenced. I mean, the closest thing we get to a Supergirl reference was really that one time where Lana Lang kind of refers to Lois as Superwoman. No, it wasn't Lois. Sorry. She refers to Superman's mother as Superwoman, but that's kind of the closest thing we ever really get to a name drop for Supergirl. So it is a bit weird how it feels like they're kind of going out of their way trying so hard not to name drop her, and I just find it kind of weird in moments like this. Again, I'm not saying they need to name drop her every episode, like, hey, remember you have a cousin or something like that, but it just, when it comes to decisions like this that would not only just affect him but also other Kryptonians that are staying on Earth as well, it feels like they should have at least brought her up for a brief moment. That's all I'm saying. So this is interesting. Not really much happens here, but we do get Jonathan Kent having another scene with John Henry Irons, kind of like in the previous episode. And, I'm kind of wondering if they're hinting at Jonathan Kent becoming like a superhero that relies more on, his skills, his natural athletic skills, and maybe, borrowing some tech from John Henry Irons. It definitely feels like that's what they're kind of building up to. Him feeling like the only one without really any powers within the family. Even though Lois, his mother, also doesn't have powers, she still has her journalistic, instincts, and that, basically is almost a superpower in its own right. I mean, without Lois Lane, I think it's safe to say that no one would have ever been able to figure out what Morgan Edge was really up to. That all said, we do have like a little bit of a prep talk from John Henry Irons telling him that he can be more than just an athlete if he wants to. So I'm very curious if that's going to lead to anything next season. We also get like kind of the full explanation here as to why it is that everyone in the town is blaming the Cushings for what happened, and we see that it's because the mayor is trying to claim that the Cushings were the ones that were really pushing for Morgan Edge more than anyone else, and that the mayor was actually trying to warn against him, which we've seen in previous episodes is completely and utterly false. And of course Lana Lang is not happy about this at all, as she totally gives the mayor a well-deserved earful, and I really hope that this does later come to bite him in the butt. But it's also this moment that makes Lois Lane realize that something does need to be done about this, because if everyone's just gonna like wrongfully blame the Cushings, you know, that's not right. So she needs to do something as a journalist in order to steer the narrative so people know who to blame, that the only one person that should be sharing this blame is Morgan Edge, who should be sharing it with himself and no one else. He's the only one to blame. We then have a moment where Lois finds out about what Superman was trying to do about keeping 7734 open, and she isn't happy about it for the same reason I brought up, like what was the like kind of only issue with 7734, and that is the idea that Sam Lane isn't always going to be the one in charge of the DoD. Other people are going to take charge, and what are they going to do when they get a hold of that kryptonite as well? Are they just going to, you know, kind of treat it like Ben Affleck's Batman, of if there's even a 1% chance he could turn, we should take it as an absolute certainty or something like that. So she's not happy, right? And we get this really cool decision between the two of them, because Clark does say that she gets what she's worried about, but he also brings up the idea that, you know, when he was turned and when Zod was taking over his body, it felt good. It felt good not having to hold back all the time. His dialogue here kind of reminded me of Justice League Unlimited, the moment when Superman was fighting against Darkseid, and he was bringing up the idea that, you know what it's like, you know, being around a bunch of people and a bunch of cities that are so fragile, knowing that every time I let loose even a little bit, I risk hurting so many. And then as he's fighting Darkseid, he's like, this is a rare opportunity where I get to cut loose completely and not hold anything back. And that's kind of what I got from this scene here, is that, yeah, not that Superman would ever want to, you know, utilize all of his powers, but the fact that when he did, when Zod was taking over his body, it felt good. And he's afraid, you know, what if, you know, something else were to give him that feeling again, and what if he can't turn back the next time it happens? So Lois Lane does agree to let them keep 7734, but she doesn't want the DoD in charge of it. So they end up going to John Henry Irons, asking him to be in charge of it in order to kind of, you know, just be the one who would know for sure whether or not Superman is a threat next time, you know, something like this were to happen. He reluctantly, seemingly agrees. I believe he does say that he agrees overall, because let's face it, his purpose for coming to this world in the beginning was to kill Superman. So now having the keys to the weapons that could do so, who could turn down a deal like that? Am I right? That said, we do cut back to the Smallville Gazette, and this is where Lois does something that I don't know how to feel about it, because she releases a document that seemingly has all the information about what was going on, the exact type of document that her dad did not want her to release to the public. And the issue I kind of have with this is the idea that I feel like this could get Sam Lane in a lot of trouble. The fact that this information got out, and it got out at the same newspaper that Lois Lane works in, meaning that he could either lose his job or worse, be arrested. So I am wondering what the actual consequences for this are going to be going forward. Now, yes, it is information that needed to come out to the public. People needed to know about this, but at the same time, the consequences may be worse than what, you know, they actually get out of it. So I am very curious to see how that is going to play out later on. Very lastly, we get Morgan Edge, and the power is finally kicking in from the Eradicator, so much to the point where kryptonite doesn't really affect him, and he's able to easily break out of his cell, and he flies off. Superman shows up, but only right as Morgan Edge has already left, and the very last shot we get is Morgan Edge absorbing even more power from the Yellow Sun, giving me my idea for how I think his downfall will inevitably be, which is kind of the same thing that happened to Overgirl from the Elseworlds crossover, the idea of he possibly absorbs way too much power from the sun, and then ends up being like that ends up being what ultimately could kill him. It's the same storyline that we got in, I believe it was Superman All-Star, which was the one where he finds out he's going to die from absorbing too much radiation from the sun. And I feel like that's what we're going to get with Morgan Edge. He's going to be overpowered for the next couple episodes, but eventually that power is going to cause him to completely explode, and so that will end up being what becomes the real threat, is Morgan Edge exploding with all that power from the sun. So I'm very curious to see how that's gonna all play out in the next couple of episodes, because guys, we got like 2 more episodes left of this series, and I couldn't be more excited. This show has just continued to get better and better episode after episode, even episodes like this where it's just a really chill, laid back episode where it's all focused on characters. I still find myself thoroughly entertained all the way through. But guys, you know what, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions always want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but of course guys, as always, just remember to keep it A+. I'll talk to you all later.
Enjoy our content and want to be a part of helping our channel grow? Become a patron supporter. We have affordable tiers to choose from that offer a variety of exclusive and early access content, from audio files for all of our shows for you to enjoy on the road, access to our Discord community, and plenty of reactions, reviews, character breakdowns, and more. Check us out at patreon.com/A+opinions, and as always, remember, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so anytime we drop a brand new video, you will be notified.